first time that I heard about this at all. Okay, Daddy came home from work. They worked shifts of a type that they would be on duty maybe 24 hours or 36 hours and then off 8 or 12, like that. So we hadn't seen him for a time. And he got home that evening and he came in so excited, and I was in the kitchen with Mother. And he asked Mother, he said, "I've got something I want to tell everybody. Get everybody in here." And she said, "We're cooking supper right now." And he said, "Well, how long is it going to be? Because I've got to talk to everybody." And it was just my mother and myself and the 3 younger kids at home, and my other sister was working. So we hurried and we got it on the table and called the kids in. And he started telling us that they had gone on a call of what they thought was going to be a plane crash north of Roswell. And he said they got called out to Blackwater Draw. And when they got out there, what they saw was not a plane that was our plane, but he said it was a flying craft from somewhere else. Well, we didn't ask questions, but Mother asked all the questions, and we were just listening, and she started, "What do you mean somewhere else?" And he said, "It's not an airplane." He said, "It's not from this world."
Now here on this map are pinpointed locations where some 30 saucers have been sighted and are still unexplained. The following proposition could be established. There actually have been and may now be present in the Earth's atmosphere strange aerial objects. Some are of a geometric order. Others can only be described as brilliant light sources. Their form cannot be determined.
He said the crash was like the flying saucers that they have talked about, because there have been a few comments on the news about flying saucers. And he said it was one of the flying saucers crashed. And I don't think really Mother believed him at first. And he said, "No," he said, "I mean it." We went out there early today, which I don't know what time that was, but early to him could have meant they left before dark. And he said when they got there, they could see that there were 2 bodies that were laying on the ground outside of this craft, and that there was one, what he called little person. And he said there's one little person that was walking around, and he said they were still alive. So she asked him, you know, what do they look like? Do they look like us? And he said they were very small, about the size of a small 10-year-old child. But the head looked like the little insect that we played with or that we saw around our house called Child of the Earth. But we all knew what that looked like, so nobody asked any questions on that. We assumed that meant that the head was too large for the body, and it had no hair, and it would have large eyes. We knew that because that's what the Child of the Earth insect looks like. He said they looked quite a bit like us. He said they were a lot smaller than we are. Because when he said a small 10-year-old child, I knew he meant smaller than I was. And I wasn't very big at 12 years old. I was a little small for my age. And he said that the other 2 were dead and that this one that was alive was very sad. But he emphasized and he kept saying, there's no need for us to be afraid. They're not here to hurt us. And he said, we couldn't help them. And he was more upset with the fact that they couldn't help this little person. And that's something he really felt badly, that he couldn't help this one that was alive. He said you could feel the hurt from this little person that was so saddened by the death of the others with him. And apparently they hadn't been there but just a few minutes, and he said the military came up and they made them leave. So they went back to the fire station, and he said there had not been a grass fire, which would have been their purpose for going. And they thought there could have been if it had been a normal plane crash. I don't think Mother really wanted to believe it at first. And he talked about how could we be so smug to think that we were the only ones that God could create. If he could create this earth, he could create a lot of others too. So that was just a conversation over dinner that night. And then there wasn't too much said about it for the next couple of days. Then I was at the fire station one afternoon because I'd gotten sick. I had to see the doctor, and we only had one vehicle. So I went back to work with Daddy. He came home at noon and picked me up on his lunch. And I'd gone to the doctor and was sitting in the kitchen part of the fire station, and I was eating a glass of ice chips. And the state policeman came in, and he yelled at Daddy. He said, "Hey, Dan, come over here." And he said, "Get all the guys. I want to show you guys something." The state policeman reached into his pocket, and he said, "I don't think you guys got to see anything like this the other day." And he pulled his hand out of his pocket, and it was closed up. He opened his hand over the table and dropped a piece of material that, when it hit the table, it was all wadded up when it left his hand, and when it hit the table, it spread out like it was water. And they were asking him, how'd you get by with this? And he said, well, he had helped with some of the pickup of debris, and he had managed to sneak that one piece in his pocket. He said, I don't know how long I'll get to keep this before I get caught. Because he said, everybody they catch, they're taking away whatever they got.
Last count I had spoken to